practice to add fluently. Also, to me, it would set directions. It was easily for me to set directions for my instructions. And I also love the 3-act task that they have. So for me, instructions was a 3. Also, content was a 3. And also for me was the assessment was a 3. And it was very good for digital. It has a digital component that allow the students to, I forgot the term they use for it, that it sets at their level so that they can continue to practice. And there's a name for it. I'm sorry, I can't think of the name. And so I thought this was a wonderful tool that can be used in the classroom.
All right, thank you for that. Jessica, France.
For the content, I had this one as a 3. It does have a lot of diverse pictures throughout this text. It also does encourage the higher order and critical thinking skills for the content. And for instruction, I also had that as a 3. It has some great 3-act tasks for like the inquiry-based learning. There's a lot of real-world examples in there, and just being in relating to the real world. And then also for the assessment, I like the assessment piece. There was a lot, so I had that as a 3 also, because it had a lot of different materials and different ways to assess the students. And then also, if they were struggling, different ways that you could, what you could do to also continue to support them.
Okay, thank you for that. Nicole Wallace.
Yes, excuse me. I had them ranked like right up there. They were like one of my top 3 for sure. In under content, I thought that they were pretty solid as far as, you know, meeting the standards and things like that, and the MTRs. And then as far as instruction, that was one of the places where I really felt like they had excelled in as far as the other versus the others. The instructional resources were really great. They had lessons that provided the methods in different ways. They had a lot of digital tools for you to use. Digital content was really, really good with Savvis. One of the areas that, well, they were just pretty solid, like overall, as far as everything else goes. But one of the areas that I did feel like they were lacking was the social emotional piece. But again, I was evaluating for a kindergarten, from a kindergarten view. And so I just felt like it could have been more, there could have been more of that piece in there. But otherwise, as far as assessment goes, they did really, really well with having different opportunities and frequent progress monitoring tools, which is, you know, again, something that we need to have. And so overall, I just felt like they did really, really well with their content and everything like that.
Great, thank you for that. Katie?
All right, I agree with everybody so far. This is one of my top. One of the things that hasn't been mentioned when it talks about content and in the instruction piece, everybody's mentioned the digital resources, but they have a lot for family engagement, which was an added piece that I thought was great because you can involve your families at home. One of the biggest sellers for me on this one was the assessment guide, and it tells you why and when to assess. So you can kind of go through and go, okay, when should I do this one? What is this one for? And they kind of give you that whole thing. They also give you some progress monitoring that's the beginning of the year, the middle of the year, and the end of the year. So it's just another diagnostic that we can use. And they have several kinds of formative and summative. So that was just something that gave them a little boost in my book.
Thank you for that. Bethany.
I have to correct myself first because I was thinking about the beginning of these lessons when I talked about the the cool videos that connected to some like STEM careers. I was thinking that in the last textbook, but that was this one. And I want to piggyback what she said about the assessment book. They had a lot of different assessment types. Even we evaluated first grade, and we saw FSA, like gridded style questions on there, and a lot of different styles. So it rated high for the assessment in our rubric. And also it rated high incorporating language arts because it had little like literacy stories that went with the skills as well.
Okay, thank you for that. All right, anyone else? Amy.
This was the one that I rated the highest. And, I rated it high in each of the different areas, but I think my favorite part about this was the amount of questions. There were so many opportunities available for students to show what they know, and they showed with a variety of different types of questions. They also had the real world examples. Each unit had the projects that go along with it that students could do. I don't know that I would ever use as many questions as they actually had in there, but it was nice with, some of my struggling students, they might need a little more practice on the long division or whatever it is. So it was nice to have a variety and a good quantity of assessment and questions available.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other comments or things that you would like to share about SABIS? Okay. Now what we're going to do for this next part is to enter in your top 3 scoring publishers for these for the courses of grades K to 5. With that, you received a link to go ahead and start putting in those. You can go back to the link in your email or in your calendar, and then just please enter your top 3 scoring publishers for this course. Okay, we'll give you guys a couple more minutes, and I had to find that link. If you're still looking for the email, Adam Hipley would have emailed it to you this afternoon. All right, does anyone need time to fill out their response? If so, if you'll just unmute and let us know.
Carrie, my computer just keeps spinning with it right now. I can't get it to load for some reason.
Okay. Maybe try it one more time and maybe I'll stop refreshing it. Maybe that's the problem with that.
It could be my lovely new work computer as well, you know.
Okay, are you maybe able to do it on your phone? Okay, Erica, were you able to get that to work? Make sure we capture your ratings as well.
It just loaded. I've hit submit. It just submitted.
Okay, great. Thank you. Anyone else having problems, or are we all good? Okay. All right, looking at our final responses, the next textbooks that we'll be taking on for further consideration will be Savvis Learning, McGraw-Hill, and Accelerate Learning. So committee member next steps is a calendar invite will be sent for publisher presentations for the week of January 3rd, and a public notice will also be released for that. So I just want to say thank you so much for your time and your dedication at this critical process for our students of Polk County. So thank you guys so much for your time, and I hope that you guys have a wonderful evening. And next we'll be hosting the 6-8 group. So thank you guys so much. Have a great evening. We are on a short break and we'll be starting shortly. Hello and welcome to tonight. We have the Polk County Public Schools Instructional Materials Committee meeting for mathematics. The focus of this time is going to be grades 6 through 8. First of all, I would really like to welcome our instructional material committee members, as well as to welcome to all of those of you who are joining us via our YouTube link. So thank you so much for being here with us tonight. The purpose of this meeting is to discuss the process the committee has taken in reviewing the digital materials submitted by publishers. Tonight, the public will be able to hear the committee members discuss the logic and context of their scoring of each digital textbook submission. Upon the ending of tonight's meeting, the committee will enter their top 3 scoring publishers for these courses for further consideration. Our agenda tonight will be to go over our non-negotiables. Then we'll be going through our rubric scoring discussions. Then the committee will take a survey, and then we'll go through the committee member next steps. The committee has looked at and completed a rubric for every publisher. In this rubric are lots of different topics. The 3 that are the non-negotiables as a district for high quality instructional materials that are heavily rated are content, instruction, and assessment. That's where the focus of our conversation will be around tonight. So during this evaluation portion, committee members will be using your rubric scores to discuss the facts around either high or low scoring for each publisher submission using our non-negotiable categories around content, instruction, and assessment. These committee members will be talking around the digital components that they reviewed for each of these publishers. And Claire is going to go ahead and start taking over at this point as her committee comes and talks through the first publisher. Claire.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
So what we're going to look at first is Big Ideas Learning, Florida's Best Standards for Math, grade 6-8. And we're going to look around and discuss the facts about the content, instruction, and assessment as far as when y'all reviewed the digital materials and your rubric. So who would like to talk about the Big Ideas books?
And you guys can either just unmute yourself and begin talking, or you can put your hand up and we can go from that. Depends on what you guys are most comfortable with.
Claire,
Yes.
this is Belinda. I'll get us going. When I looked at Big Ideas, at least in the content area, from an 8th grade, because that was the smaller committee that I was on was the 8th grade. I did not see a lot of instructional content that really spoke to me as far as it being a suitable textbook for our students. Okay. So this one I scored low.
Okay.
Can you elaborate, maybe Belinda, a little bit on maybe some of those indicators that had that low scoring for you?
The instructional content provides comprehensive coverage of the full intent of the language arts standards. I didn't see a lot of that at the 8th grade level. That was if I were looking at it from a teacher standpoint, that it was visible to find and be able to tie it in to the lessons. Does that make sense, what I'm saying there? And then the integrating diversity across ethnic groups, I didn't see as far as it including relevant graphics or images and experiences. It had pictures, yes, but as far as it really tying it in there in a way that was I didn't see it.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Emily.
I really like Big Ideas. I've been kind of using some of their worksheets in my classroom already because I really like the way that they format their work and all of the extra stuff that they have online in regards to specifically looking at like right now we're doing unit rates. So I could look at their book and then I could find extra practice and then I could find here's what you should do for your accelerated kids. And it was super easy for me to find. And I don't know if it's any more diversified than anything else. I don't think when I looked at my rubric for Big Ideas versus anything else, they were all about the same. There wasn't anybody who was like, oh man, these people are going above and beyond to include all of these extra things. But I feel like Big Ideas just, I really liked it and I really like the format. And I think that my kids enjoy it. They like the way that it's formatted and all of the extra steps that they put in. And when I looked at the standards, when we were specifically looking at that one standard, it did meet that one standard when we were meeting in November. And then as I've been looking through it for my 6th graders this year, it does have all of the standards that we're looking for.
Okay. Anyone else have any ideas or thoughts? Lorraine?
Yeah, this is Lorianne. I had also scored it low in meeting that standard. I scored it high overall because I really do like big ideas and I think it's something useful, but I do think it's one we're going to have to bring a lot to the table ourselves as the teachers, and to hit the depth of the standard, because it felt like there were a lot of those areas that it just barely met our standard and it wasn't quite going to the depth. And when we looked at them in person in the paper book, it's the same limitation I've seen before. As much as I may like the presentation and the overall look, I still need a separate sheet of paper for the kids to copy to, because the workbook space isn't enough. So it's consumable, but I still got to use extra paper for all my kids if I really want them to work out a problem.
Right.
So we
And
want to
just
make
as
sure that
just as a reminder, we're looking and talking through the digital component pieces only that you guys have reviewed.
Anyone else have any thoughts on big ideas? Okay. So the next one that we're going to be looking at is Carnegie Learning, Carnegie Learning Florida Middle School Math Solutions. And again, we're only discussing the facts of content, instruction, and assessment that we did with our rubrics as it relates to what you all were able to review with the digital resources that were sent. So who would like to begin the discussion about Carnegie?
Okay, Claire, I'll get us started again. Sorry. Carnegie, I was one that I scored high on their digital pieces, not only with the resources that they provided with the high expectations and critical thinking skills. Sorry, I forgot to turn my camera on. But I also scored them high in the instruction and the assessments, because when, especially in the assessments, I'm trying to get my computer to work here. Okay, it provided the opportunities for varied and frequent progress monitoring of students. On that one, it had a lot of different options there. It also had several formative and summative assessments that were available for our teachers to use. Okay. So in that regard, those were some of the areas. I mean, there are others, but those are some of the main ones that I remember for Carnegie.
Okay. Go ahead, Tracy.
I agree with Belinda. The thing I liked about it was it wasn't as difficult to maneuver in the online on the technological side. Some of them were hard to maneuver and find the resources, and this one wasn't as hard to find the resources. And if it's hard for us to find it, yes, we can show our kids where to go, but when they get home, they seem to forget what we told them or how to get there. So trying to explain to them, via email or Class Dojo or Schoology is sometimes hard, especially if parents are not savvy on technology. So I found that not as difficult as others to be able to explain how to get from place to place where we wanted them to go. Even putting in links, some of the kids and the parents have a hard time just with the links themselves not working or not understanding how to follow them. So I found it easier than some, but a little harder than others as well.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have any thoughts on Carnegie? Leah?
I also really liked Carnegie. It was very easy to maneuver online. It wouldn't be as confusing for our students. There is a couple tabs you have to click through if you're not on the first module and the first topic. But I think once the students kind of get the habit down and figure out how to use it, it has a really nice online platform, and it felt easy to use. It wasn't one of my lowest, but it also wasn't one of my highest.
Okay. Go ahead, Emily.
I really like the online platform of this one for the kids. Like the online stuff kind of seems like a game.
Okay.
And I think that's super approachable for a lot of our middle schoolers.
Okay. Go ahead, Ms. Edwards.
I honestly struggled a bit more finding each of the components, and much like the others said, if it's easy to get to, the kids will find it. I found it more difficult to access the online portion of this one and found it very difficult to evaluate. However, when I did get into some of the areas and look at it, the areas I was able to get into, I did see good content, but I felt like it was more for the tech side of things, and it wasn't as good for our classrooms or our schools that don't have a one-to-one ratio with technology yet.
Okay. Any other thoughts? Okay. So next up is EdGEMS Math, Florida EdGEMS Math. And again, looking at content, instruction, and assessment and what we reviewed with the electronic resources and our rubric. Go ahead, Emily.
I really hated navigating online with EdGEMS because I couldn't use my back button, which you don't realize that you really like until you can no longer go back to the previous page. And I found that like anytime I wanted to go back, I had to it logged me completely out, and I had to log back in like every single time. And I would consider myself more of a tech person, but it was just really annoying. I did not like the interface online at all. It might be easy to find something, but like you can't, like there's no drop-down menus. You have to know exactly where you want to go in order to find the resource. And that to me is super annoying. Okay. It is pretty, but I just didn't really like the interface.
Okay.
Emily, can you elaborate a little bit maybe on some of your indicators of your ratings to for EdGEMS when you were in the interface, able to kind of go through it?
Sorry. Yeah, so like when I was rating EdGEMS, like some of the things like, and to me, I could only rate on what I could find. So like the extra materials, I could not find. Like when I was looking at Big Ideas or when I was looking at Carnegie, it was like, oh, here's extra resources, and I could click on it and like find a PDF. And I couldn't do that with EdGEMS. I couldn't find a teacher's edition to say, okay, you're doing unit rates. So then they've already learned ratios. So this is what's new and this is what's coming after. I couldn't find that in like a place on their website. And to me, that's super important for me to just keep my brain straight.
Okay.
And then they also I didn't see that where they did like the social emotional learning. It was really cool looking through some of like the teacher side of the textbooks. And it was like, you should encourage kids to do this. And when they fail, you should do this. Like some of that, like motivation, social emotional stuff was like really cool to see in the other textbooks. And I didn't realize that like textbooks did that now. And now I realize EdGems does not do that.
Thank you. Anyone else have some thoughts on EdGems?
Yes, it was hard to navigate. I did like a lot of what I saw in EdGems, but I also did notice that, and maybe it was because of how hard it was to navigate, I didn't feel like it provided the structural or lesson plan outline that was necessary for us and the easy access to get to those. I also noticed that I couldn't find those highlights of common mistakes and misconceptions, the things that we need to help scaffold. And like Emily had said, there was very limited social emotional type skills embedded into the lesson, which I think ties in with those misconceptions and mistakes and how to address them rather than just you made a mistake. I mean, we all know how to do that, but when the book tells us which direction to go with what is the common mistake, was saying, here, I think you're doing this, let's try this, it comes across much more positive, and it's helpful when it's embedded in there in front of us and we're not trying to find that verbiage in our head on the fly.
Okay.
And I didn't see a lot of that.
All right. Thank you. Anyone else with EdGems? Okay. All right. So the next one is HMH, Florida's Best into Math. Again, looking at content, instruction, and assessment. Who would like to begin the discussion on HMH?
For me, this was one of the worst sites to navigate online. There is so many little bubbles and things you have to scroll through and click just to try and find what you're going to. And so I had a hard time just finding what I wanted to find. So I can only imagine our students aren't going to scroll past what they see on that first page. And so for me, that was one of the hardest things of figuring out where exactly I was needing to go to be able to even view the material.
So were you able to view anything in order as far as it related to the content or instruction or assessment when you were able to get through?
When I got through, I could see some of it. It was good material, but it wasn't one of the best. It did its job, but I feel like some of the websites did much better at explaining the misconceptions that students may have and how well or what they could work on, what's coming next, what we just worked in, and how it ties into those things.
Okay. Right. Anyone else with thoughts on HMH?
On the tech side, it was one of my first ones that I went through, so I may have been a little more forgiving because I scored it as one of my highest across the board. The only thing I really didn't see was a lot of the social emotional, but I still rated it fairly high because I did see the highlights on the common mistakes and misconceptions, and basically like found whole pages kind of dedicated to that. I felt like it really did meet the depth of our standard, and several areas went a little bit deeper. It was one that across the board I was very impressed with.
Okay. Yes, Emily.
I have to keep like going back so that I can like make sure I'm talking about the right one. But I was looking at their, I think it's called Waggle, which is kind of funny name. I kind of like that interface where like, as long as like, if your kids have access, and I know it's all like, oh, if they have access, but if they do, there's like a really cool program where it'll like, it shows you like what kids skills they need. And then it's supposed to recommend extra problems to them in that interface. And I didn't find it terribly difficult or hard to get to. I know that because it's like it's one of the, like, we don't have full access to this site. I'm not exactly sure how easy it is to go in and help kids and assign them things. But I really enjoyed all of that individual where you can see kind of like what the STAR test should be, but easier to see immediate feedback on your kids, especially on something just like homework. You know, you don't want to grade homework every night, but you also want to know how your kids are doing every single day. And I think that's a super beneficial tool.
Thank you. Anyone else with any thoughts on HMH? All right. So what we have coming up, I know we have someone who logged in. So what we're doing is we're going by publishers. And so since you came in late, we'll go back to the others. So at least you can give your thoughts and feedback on the other ones that you had missed. But we're looking at our non-negotiables in the rubric, which was content, instruction, and assessment. So since you came on, I'm just going to go through it real quick to catch you up. Do you have, if you have any thoughts or comments on the content, instruction, and assessment based on the rubric and what you saw online through the electronic resources? So the first one was Big Ideas, which is the Florida Best Standards for Math, grade 6-8. So I didn't know, I'd like to know if you have any thoughts or anything as far as the content, instruction, and assessment with this one. And if not, Shikol, just let me know, and then we'll just go to the next one, and that way I can get everybody caught up.
Okay, and we can always come back and talk about any of the ones that you guys may want to talk about a little bit later as well.
So the next one was Carnegie, and then we had EdGems. So we'll just go back to those just so you know. The next one after EdGems was HMH. That's the one that we had just finished discussing. And so now where we are is on Math Nation, Florida's Best. So if anybody has any thoughts on Math Nation as far as the content, instruction, and assessment and would like to share, please do. Go ahead, Emily.
Looking at their assessment options online, I really disliked that you couldn't pick and choose what kind of questions you wanted to ask your kids online. That was something that a lot of the other platforms allowed for. I know Carnegie definitely did because you could play with their thing. And I believe Big Ideas let you do that, play with that. And even, I can't remember, I don't think Big Ideas had a great online test taking tool, but at least an online test creator tool. And Math Nation, you can't. And to me, that's a big problem because I don't think that necessarily always the book lines up with the test. And I know they spiral back, which is great for tests. But if our county curriculum doesn't line up with the order of the book, then our kids are kind of left out of test questions, which is the issue like I run into like this year using Math Nation, having to kind of alter their test like by hand.
Okay. Anyone else with thoughts with Math Nation?
I just want to say that I'm so sorry.
No,
I'm
go.
sorry. I just want to say I agreed with Emily. That was one of my problems with Math Nation is their setup of their assessments.
Okay. Go
I
ahead.
think,
Oh, Carla.
oh, I'm sorry. You want me to go or wait?
Go ahead.
Okay. I think the biggest struggle I've had with the Math Nation and even looking at it this time around is it didn't address the needs of all our learners. It definitely meets the standard and probably exceeds the standard in most areas, but it does not give us the instruction we need on all levels. And therefore the assessment is also geared very high. And because you can't pick your questions, like we've said, there's no way to assess the growth of our lower learners as well.
Okay. I agree that the test hits a certain level, doesn't go up or below. It also doesn't give a lot of practice where our lower learners need more practice problems. And so that's something that's, then you're struggling to find, you know, those extra things to help them with more practice and getting them up to where they need to be. It left a lot, again, it left out a lot of students. It hit that middle area. It had good content, good information, but it left out our lower and our higher students in some cases, I think.
Okay.
One little thing I've noticed is when you get on their assessments, one of the big first things you can see is report a bug or a typo, and that makes me nervous of if they have that posted so that it's super easy to see how well are those questions made and if they're super accurate or not.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay. So the next one we have is McGraw-Hill, Florida Reveal Math, grades 6 through 8. And again, looking at content, instruction, and assessment. Who would like to share their reviews?
I can share really quick, Claire. My audio is going in and out, but I do like McGraw-Hill. I like the way that scaffold and it can target different learners. It has different materials there for ELLs, for your ESE. I like it. I mean, the pictures, inclusion, all of it is there. I would say McGraw-Hill was one of my high picks, but I like the way it had the remediation and the scaffolding embedded into it, and it meets the standards from what I gathered.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else want to share their thoughts on McGraw-Hill? Go ahead, Emily.
I like their online interface. It is really easy to find like a student Spanish edition, which is super useful. I also really liked their online assignment generator, if that's how you call it, where you can assign specific things. And they have the same thing for like tests and quizzes where you could do it online, but then they also have that option for you to print it out, which is just, it's my favorite thing. It just makes even generating worksheets, extra practice, it makes it super nice. I think that they also have remediation videos online, but I might be mixing that up.
Okay. Go ahead, Belinda. Well, maybe. Go ahead, Belinda.
With the one thing that I liked about the McGraw-Hill was the way they handled the common mistakes and letting you know what to look for in students' work. And also in their online, they had a section like some of, I think, Carnegie and maybe a couple of the other ones also did, where there was a piece in the online part that you could assign to the kids if they were behind or ahead, or they had different levels in their online piece that you could assign for the kids to help.
Go ahead, Miss Edwards.
I think most of what I was going to say has been said at this point, but yes, in terms of the technical piece and the book piece, I think this had the best blend. They all met the content that we need, that most of the areas met, if not above. The assessment was adaptable. And that's not meaning that it's not got the on-level questions. You're putting those in there, but it grows with the kid, and you can tailor it to an individual student if you're trying to assess based on whether you're assessing the standard that they've met or even assessing their growth to see where we need to help that individual. So I felt like the assessment piece was a lot more flexible to meet the needs of all kids and all assessments that we need to do throughout the year, not just our test assessments, but our tickets out the door and our mini assessments in the classroom. This was set up that we can do it both technologically and on paper very fluidly. And I really liked the setup and how easy it was to use.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Martin.
I really like their ebook version. It's interactive, so the students can get instant if they're right or if they're wrong. And it's not just doing math. They also have written responses so that you can see what your students are thinking about. And so getting that instant feedback on if they're right or wrong is really nice. If they are at home or if they're ahead or behind, so that you're not trying to bounce back and forth between what you're teaching today, what you taught yesterday, and it's right there right away.
Thank you. Anyone else with any comments or thoughts about McGraw-Hill? Okay. So the next one we have is Savas Learning Company, Envision, Florida Best Mathematics, grades 6-8, looking at content, instruction, and assessment. So who would like to begin the discussion of this, of Savas? Go ahead, Belinda.
Okay, I'll be the brave one and speak out here. When I first looked at this particular online, it had a lot of game stuff and things like that for the kids. I didn't find as much. I mean, it kind of hit the middle on my rubrics for the lessons providing instruction that included inquiry-based learning.
Okay.
I didn't score it real high in that area, nor in the area of addressing prerequisite knowledge and skills. So those were two areas that I didn't see as much as I saw in some of the other textbooks.
Go ahead, Emily.
I actually feel the opposite. I feel like they did. So they have like, it seems like they've incorporated a lot of 3 acts like into their online textbook and into what I would assume would be their physical textbook as well, about, and all of like the video kind of things. at the beginning of a lot of their lessons. And I am a big fan of 3 acts because it gets the kids in trying to figure out why are we sitting in this classroom today? Why does anybody care about what we're doing? Which is the questions that I answer on a daily basis. And I really like the fluidity of it. And I think it also had some of those like online gamey kind of things to assess prereqs that students have forgotten, and a little bit more maybe some of the more advanced kids can use. And I also like that online you can, and I think that we're just using like it's called like a digital sampler or something, but it's, once again, I love that I can just click on it and Spanish student edition, just click on it and I can print off those sheets if I've got ELLs, or even parents want that Spanish copy sometimes to help their kids. I scored it kind of in the middle as well on a lot of the things. It wasn't as high as some of my others in the middle. But I did really enjoy the way that the online communication or the online interface looked. I thought it was really appealing. And if it's appealing, I think kids will use it more.
Okay. Anyone else with any comments or thoughts? Okay. All right. So, in the calendar invite that y'all received and your email that you got, you should see a link to the survey. And what you're going to do is you're going to put in your top 3 scoring publishers for this course in there, and we will go from there. So like I said, it's in the calendar invite and in the email that was sent to you by Carrie or by myself if it was in the calendar. All right, Carrie, if you would be able to, because I can't see it.
Fine. So it looks like according to this, our top 3 are Carnegie, HMH, and McGraw-Hill.
So next steps, a calendar invite will be sent for the publisher presentations the week of January 3rd. A public notice will be released for that. So be on the lookout for that. We are currently planning that even as we speak. So as soon as that is finalized, we will send that to you and a public notice will be sent out so that they're aware of this taking place, when and where. So thank you all. I really do appreciate you coming on tonight and participating in this and having those conversations. And I hope you all have a wonderful evening. If you have any questions, please be sure to reach out to either myself, Claire Bernier, or Carrie Foster, and we will try to get those answers to you. Again, thank you and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you guys so much. We appreciate your hard work on this critical process to get the best resources, quality resources for our students. So thank you so much.
Recording stopped.